and welcome to this week's YouTube video. This video is the second video in a two-part series on how I painted these two dogs in oils. In last week's video I showed you the background and the golden retriever. This week I'm going to show you how I painted the Dalmatian. So let's get straight into the video and I will talk about what I'm doing as I go along. In my opinion, Dalmatians are the trickiest dogs to paint. This is because you have to paint both the form of the dog and also the detail of the spots. By form, I mean the structural shape of the dog. I drew this dog out in detail before I started and marked in where all the spots should be. Correct drawing is imperative with painting this dog well, because the easiest thing to go awry will be the drawing. Understanding what you are looking at is really important to a successful painting, and this will help you with the structure. So for example, I have a slight value change and also a temperature shift in this area here. I know from the structure of the dog's chest that I am looking at these two tendons here and also the tendons of the chest area. I have drawn out my dog correctly and understand what I am seeing in my reference photo. What do I need to do next? If you watched last week's video, you'll know that the palette I used for the golden retriever and the background was limited mainly to 4 colours. These were yellow ochre light, cadmium red, ultramarine deep and titanium zinc white. I also used alizarin crimson and transparent red oxide mixed with ultramarine deep to give me a black, which I used for the dog's nose and eyes and also the dark areas of the carpet. For the Dalmatian, I have added cadmium yellow and also transparent yellow oxide. I'll now show you the colour mixes on my palette for this dog. I have 3 blacks. My first black is made up of transparent red oxide, alizarin crimson and ultramarine deep. This gives me a warm black. My second black is a mixture of cadmium red and ultramarine deep. This is a transitional black because it can be both warm and cool. If I add more red, it is more like a brown. If I add more blue, it will be closer to a blue-purple. My third black is a mix of my second black plus transparent yellow oxide. Because transparent yellow oxide is transparent, it will not affect the values of my dark mixes like yellow ochre light, which is semi-transparent. This will give me a dark that is more grey in colour, although I can make it warmer by adding more yellow, or I can make it cooler by adding more blue-purple. Remember, yellow and purple are complementary colours. One will neutralise the other. This last black will give me a good base for my lighter colours, which are in the shadows. You'll see if I add white, I now have a sort of grey colour. I will use this as my starting point for the shadows and then adjust accordingly, depending upon what additional colours I think I see in my reference photo. I'm also going to mix up a lighter colour. Remember, dog's fur is essentially skin with fur, so these pink areas that can be seen on the chest can be treated the same as painting flesh tones. I will mix up an orange of yellow ochre light and cadmium red and add white and a little ultramarine deep, just to take the saturation out of it. I then mix up one last colour where I add a little more white to my flesh colour and also cadmium yellow. Remember that cadmium yellow is not as warm as yellow ochre light. Cadmium red is my warmest colour on my palette, and as I move away from this on the colour wheel, it gets cooler. Yellow ochre light is more of a yellow orange and would be too warm on its own for these lighter areas. Understanding those colour shifts is very important for painting the Dalmatian correctly. Look at your reference photo and ask yourself, am I painting red, yellow or blue? If you see red, it can only be red, orange or red, purple. If you see blue, it can only be blue, blue, purple or blue, green. If you see yellow, it can only be yellow, yellow, orange or yellow, green. Then ask yourself, how light or dark is it? The dog's face is shifting between blue, cool, to yellow, warm, to red, warm, to blue, cool. The dog's chest is shifting between blue, cool, to red, warm, to yellow, warm, and back to blue, cool. Across the stomach and the legs, it shifts from yellow, warm, to blue, cool, to red, warm, to yellow, warm, to red, warm, to blue, cool. Not only that, but I also have to contend with my value changes as well. I need to make sure I select the correct blacks. Do I want a warm black or a cool black? As I lighten, I need to bear in mind that white will cool down my mix. If my intention is to go warmer with my colours, I need to adjust with either yellow, orange, red or red purple. My pre-mixed colours will act as a starting point, but very often I will need to adjust my mix. For example, this pink here strays into alizarin crimson, and often my purples end up carrying either orange or alizarin crimson. I am continually mixing up colours or adjusting colours on my palette as I move across the dog's body. You'll also notice that I'm painting in my spots first. I am using my warm black, but I'm only using a small amount on a very dry brush. I want these spots to be very light to start with before I commit to thicker paint. The effect is more of a brown. Once I've put these in, I start to darken the really obvious ones. Remember that your black spots will be no different from the rest of the dog. They will also shift between warm and cool. If I paint them all the same temperature, they will look odd. The ones in the shadows will carry more blue, the ones in the light will carry more red-brown. Just as I did in the rest of the painting, I am working section by section, starting with the head and moving down, and being very disciplined about moving on to the next section. I am trusting that I am right with my choices and resisting the urge to fiddle with the paint. If I fiddle and adjust too much, I will lose the freshness of my paint. I am using these flat brushes by Art Master to do a lot of the legwork. I am laying the paint on the surface of the canvas. Imagine you are laying a sticker and placing it down rather than brushing it. I need enough paint to allow me to push and pull it around. Use the paint straight from the tube with no medium. It will behave much better and allow you to manipulate it more. You'll notice often that I pull my white paint into my spots, and this pushes the spots off both colour and value. So I am continually having to readjust the spots with more paint. This is why I was sparing with my black paint to start with, as I knew I would be adjusting them. Too much black may pollute my white as I drag my edges into each other. I will switch brushes every now and then from my flat Art Master brushes to my long-haired combers. These brushes allow me to add paint over the top of other paint without pulling it off. They are also good for dragging paint too. These brushes will also help me suggest the form of the dog, so I need to make sure my strokes go both across, down and horizontally. As I move into each new area, I try to start with the areas I can identify the easiest. I then use these areas to help me figure out the parts I am not so sure about. Very often I will hold a white card up to my Dalmatian because it will help me understand the colour I am seeing. There is a lot more yellow in this dog than you may initially think. I have moved across the whole dog doing all of these things, thinking about the anatomy of the dog and what I am seeing, thinking about the colours I am looking at. Is it red, yellow or blue? How light is it? How dark is it? Does my big brush strokes suggest form? Is my smaller brushwork too detailed? Have I overpainted any areas? Are my edges too soft? Are my edges too hard? Have I used enough paint? Have I used too much paint? Do I need to scrape some back? It's very challenging and requires a lot of concentration to get it right. But if you keep asking yourself these questions continuously as you paint, it will become second nature. Practice does make things easier with time. I hope you have enjoyed today's video and found it useful. Please like and subscribe if you can, and check out my website sarahhallidayart.com, where you will find examples of my work and also details of online classes that I run. Thank you for watching and see you for the next one.